Good evening and welcome to the Governing Board meeting for the Deer Valley Unified School District on Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. I call the meeting to order at 7. Let the record reflect that all board members are present. If you are able to stand, please do so and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Our next item on the agenda is the action item. Approve recommendation for the principal of Canyon Spring School. Mr. Carver, can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board approve the recommendation for principal of Canyon Springs Schools, Jamie Aldred.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Muffin? Who's?
I can take it, President.
Oh,
Paperman.
Dr. Z,
Yeah.
sorry.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, it is our pleasure this evening to bring forth Miss Jamie Aldred as our recommended candidate for the principal of Canyon Springs. In her interviews, Miss Aldred displayed a great deal of leadership and confidence. The committee was quite impressed with the agility that she was able to show with respect to her command of the different programming that takes place at Canyon Springs. As you know, Canyon Springs is a STEM school. It has a Renaissance program. It has a large special education program. Her expertise in special education at the district level and that she was able to carry that over to the school level is something that the committee noted as well. Jamie also has demonstrated much leadership in the previous 3 years in various delicate situations and in COVID as well. We are excited to have her, and we know that she's going to do a great job.
Would you like to say something?
Hold on. They need to vote.
Jamie? I'll take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5 votes, okay. Would you like to say something?
Just want to say thank you all so much for the opportunity. I know that it's going to be such a privilege to get to work with the staff, community, and students at Canyon Springs, and I look forward to continuing to have a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Welcome to Deer Valley. Our next one, approve recommendation for the principal of Constitution Elementary, Mr. Carver. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board approve the recommendation steps as the principal of Constitution Elementary School.
Second.
Dr. Z.
Thank you again, President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch. Again, it is my pleasure to bring forth Ms. Gina Millsaps as our recommended candidate for the principal of Constitution Elementary. Gina has much experience in many of the areas, if not all of the areas, that the staff at Constitution Elementary was looking for. She has a background in English learners. She has a background with special education. She has a background working with students who may come from situations where they have either trauma at home or other types of struggles. Gina has a demonstrated track record of helping and supporting all of our students. And so we are excited to bring her forth as the candidate for Constitution Elementary.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mrs. Millsap, would you like to say something?
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Vink, I am so beyond excited for the opportunity to lead and serve at Constitution with the staff and the students, the families, and the community. And I appreciate this opportunity and am super excited to get in and start the good work. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Deer Valley. Okay. Our next item, number 4, is district report, item 8, 2022-2023. Oh, okay. They're all leaving. They're all leaving.
They're all leaving. Bye. Bye, April Fraley. And there they go. Now it's even. Both sides of the river are even. She's taking the flowers with her. Oh, I did say she could give them to her. I did get to smell them though. Now that's better. See, that's. I don't know why they freak me out so.
Our next item, number 4, is district report, item 8, 2022-2023 bond override citizen advisory committee report. Mr. Belgorino.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This evening we have a rather, what I'll characterize as a brief report on a very weighty subject matter. There is a committee that's been at work for some time. The purpose of that committee their charge was to provide input regarding the educational and building needs of the district and to include any possibility of recommendations for future elections to be able to fund those needs. There is a link on this page. It's a little hard to see right under Bond and Override Committee. That link is to the committee page so that if you're interested in seeing any of the presentations or the information that we've provided to the committee members, and for those that unfortunately couldn't make one of the meetings, it's a repository of the information so that they can all be on the same page as we get together. The committee work is not done at this point. We do have one more meeting this Thursday. We have met 2 times previous to the last meeting, the last scheduled meeting for this Thursday. They are held here at the district office boardroom from 6 to 8 o'clock. Most of these meetings go a little longer than the 2 hours just because of the information that we're trying to cover. I do have several slides here that include the members that are on the committee. I wanted to thank them. I think there may be even 1 or 2 of them that, due to their active involvement in the district, may be present tonight or maybe even watching online. But the committee members do commit not only the time of the meetings for each of the meetings that I'd identified earlier, but there's some homework we provide to them to review in advance of those meetings to make the most of our time when we do come together, as well as there are the electronic communications that happen in between meetings. I wanted to thank those people that have volunteered to be able to look at what is a great deal of information and to come up with some proposed recommendations for the board to consider. Some of the takeaways, some of the key takeaways, I'll just comment on the M&O override. We did look at a lot of information, including kind of a condensed School Finance 101 I don't know, session or a topic area. And what the takeaways from that have been is that the M&O override is essential for us to stay competitive. All of our neighboring districts have some form of M&O override in place, most of them at the 15%, which is the maximum amount that's allowable. I think there's only one district that we consider to be comparable, and that's the Peoria School District that is at 13%. And this override, unfortunately, has to be renewed every 5 years, or else it starts to phase down. It gets reduced by a third in the 6th year, and then 2/3 in the 7th year before it would expire completely if it weren't renewed by the voters. So that's why we are constantly having to go back out to the voters and ask for the approval. It is 100% paid for by the local property taxpayers, so it is important that they have a say in that. And some of the data that we looked at includes the latest information from the National Center for Educational Statistics, in which we are not getting the state average in dollars per student, but we're getting better results than even comparable districts that have a similar demographic. Students that they serve or populations in there, but unfortunately for us, they do receive more dollars per student based on things that they have in addition to the funding formula or in addition to the voter-approved items that we have, which include the M&O override and the bond. Both were last approved in 2019, and these elections aren't new to us. We've had these elections in place for decades, but unfortunately, they have become, I'll say, necessary in our opinion, to be able to afford what we enjoy to be able to provide for the students that we serve in our district. The data that we looked at, the national spending, the NCES data that I mentioned before, just under $12,000 per student in 2020, and in 2020 we spent just over $8,000 per student. The state average for that year in 2020 was about $9,000 per student. So we're getting $1,000 less per student than the state average. That state average is what we see with the rankings that will have Arizona, depending on what citation you're going to use. We're at or near the bottom in the national rankings in terms of dollars per student. And that's with the existing 15% M&O override in place. So we're not asking for any additional money. We're asking that it just be continued. The things that the M&O override is currently paying for, we have about 8.5% of all of our employees' salaries is being covered by the M&O override that we enjoy. We have class size reduction in there. Despite having some large class sizes, they would be even larger if it weren't for the M&O override. And we have some specialized programs like all-day kindergarten, which the state does not fund. That is being funded from the current M&O override. And then there's some additional, much smaller funding items that we can share with you guys as we continue to put together and assemble the recommendation from this committee. As I mentioned earlier, we still have a meeting scheduled yet this week. When it comes to the bond, the committee looked at what the annual capital allocation is the capital allocation we receive as a district, and it is far less than what the annual spending needs are for the district. That's why we have and have had a bond in place, as I mentioned earlier, for decades. And the last bond was approved in 2019. At that time, we mentioned to the voters it was a 5-year initiative. We're just a little over halfway through that initiative. Some of that is just timing due to supply chain issues. For example, we've had buses on order for over 2 years and still don't have them. We've had white fleet replacements. Both are funded from the 2019 bond. So the dollars are encumbered. They just haven't been spent yet because we have not received those items. But we do anticipate being able to be on track within that 5-year period of time, which then begs the question as to how we would fulfill some of the needs, capital needs of the district beyond that period of time. And so there is some economy of scale for holding both elections at the same time because we do pay for the cost of those The Maricopa County Elections Department does the work for us, but they charge us for that service. And the committee's working on a list of projects that they think are going to be necessary, including addressing some of the anticipated growth that is happening in our district. So some of the next steps, I've already mentioned this, we are refining the list of projects when it comes to the bond. That's where I think the majority of our time will be spent this Thursday evening or late afternoon, early evening. We'll be looking at tax rate implications so that we can fully understand what the impact of the recommendation is. We'll be finalizing that recommendation to bring back to the governing board on May 9th to consider calling for the election in November of 2023. In between that, we have consulted with a elections consultant to do some polling. The committee thought it would be helpful to find out what some of the interest level would be. So we have a professional phone survey that's being administered for high efficacy voters to be able to get some feedback about the recommendations that we're finalizing at the meeting this Thursday, and hope to bring that, or our plan is on May 9th for the board to formally consider whether or not we want to call for one or more elections to be held this November. And I think that's all the information I have here. It is, so I'll pause there to see if there's any questions or comments from the governing board.
Any questions, governing board?
Go ahead.
Mr. Carver?
Point of clarification for you, Mr. Miglorino. So the election that we're proposing for the M&O override would be to continue this current level of taxes that's being levied against the property owners in the district. We're not asking for an increase. We just want to continue what we have when it comes to the M&O, correct?
President Paperman, Mr. Carver, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Our next item is, oh, Mrs. Fisher has a question, but you want me to ask this question? Okay, so she has a question. If they're going to provide info on what schools are under enrolled, like information of schools that are under enrolled.
President Paperman, are you asking if that's going to be in the recommendation? Or did the committee look at that information?
The numbers of students? Did they look at it?
Did they look at it to see if it were, how many of our schools are under enrolled? If there are other options, is that related to the bond? Because normally you go out for a bond, you have a plan as far as schools that we need to build or things of that nature. And we haven't looked at we have under enrolled schools. We have schools that are seriously under enrolled, and we have others that are over capacity. So have we looked at evening them out? I mean, I understand, the way that it just has become a way that we bond and we override just to bond and override because it's our way. But our taxpayers need to know that there's a purpose in it, that it's not just being done because just because it's what we do. There's got to be a valid purpose for it.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, thank you for the clarification. I would not agree with you that we bond and override just because that's the way we do things. I was trying to provide evidence that it's not uncommon for us. I would say that the bond and override are necessary based on the needs that we have as a district. But to answer your question directly, yes, the committee did look at the demographer's latest report that looked at under-enrolled and overcapacity schools. Even some of the under-enrolled capacity schools, and these are all projections, right? We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Even some of the under-enrolled schools are projected from our demographer to grow over the course of time. And we're seeing a little bit of evidence in that, just even in the kindergarten numbers at some of our schools that are in the region where there are underutilized schools. I think it's not a secret that many of those schools are in the southern portion of our district, and we're starting to see that there's some increased enrollment, even in numbers that we're expecting for next year. And so we're looking at it, and not over just a single period of time or 1 year. We're looking at it over a longer period of time to make sure that we don't make an adjustment that would then require some other act in it, so that our constituents wouldn't be seeing a changing school boundary, for example, over the course of several years, so that their child may end up going to multiple schools over a short period of time. But it is fair to say that one of the things that we do need to consider is the possibility of school boundary changes, especially in some of the growth areas. So in addition to building schools, and just, I'm not trying to steal any thunder from the May 9th report. There's one elementary school in the proposed recommendation that we're working, and there's the first phase of a high school, both of which are at the latter part of the 5-year plan that we're working on as part of the recommendation. So it's not just some of that is due to the uncertainty or unknown of the pace of the growth. What I think we could say with some certainty is it's not if the growth is going to happen, it's when that's in question. And that's one of the things that the committee is certainly wrestling with.
Thank you, Mr. Miglorino. The next item is call to the public. Do we have any so no call to the public. Okay, we're moving on to item number 6, old business. Do I have a motion to approve annual K-12 user facility fields free schedule for 2023-2024?
So moved, or second, so moved, whichever.
Do I have a second? Mr. Miglorino, do you have a presentation for this?
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, no, there has been no changes to what we previewed at the last meeting, but just quickly, a small increase on the 7th and 8th grade adult admission from $3 to $4, providing a senior citizen and veterans discount for $2 for adult admissions at our 7th and 8th grade athletic events, and then a family pass that would allow for 10 events at $30. The other change was increasing the summer school courses that we charge for from $175 per course to $200 per course.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those that oppose say nay. Aye. The next item is consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda?
I move that the governing board accept the consent agenda items 7A through 7G.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Aye. Our next item is action. Oh, Mrs. Orwin.
Yes. Oh, sorry. I voted out loud.
Our next item, number 8, is action A, approve addenda pre-approval. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept item 8A, approve the addenda for pre-approvals.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Miglorino, do you have a presentation for this?
President Paperman, no, we do not have a presentation.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Aye. The next one is B. Approve architecture service for the completion of Building 500 at Inspiration Mountain School using one GPA contract number 1821P15. Can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the approval for architectural services for the completion of Building 500 Inspiration Mountain School using one GPA contract number 18-221P-15.
Is there a second? Thank you. Mr. Miglerino, do you have any
President,
presentation?
yeah, President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, just quickly, just going back and giving some background, we originally had a set of dollar amount from the 2019 bond to build elementary number 32, which has now become Inspiration Mountain School. Due to cost escalations, we weren't able to complete the entire school, so we elected not to build the 500 building, and we opened the school as a kindergarten through sixth grade campus. We've made a provision already to include 7 additional classrooms that were built, but we needed to do some additional refinements and finishes too. That work will be done in the next 2 weeks. This is to build the science lab and 3 additional classrooms along with some additional restrooms to ensure that we would have a K-8 campus starting with the 24-25 school year. And this is the first part of this, which is getting the architect on board to draw the building. The building had been previously drawn in the original plans, but an additional set has to be created because this will be under a separate permit. So it was not able to be completed initially. Now here we are. We're going to be 2 years from the opening, and we will be able to complete the project as we had originally hoped to do, but unfortunately did not have the budget to do so when we originally awarded the contract for the construction. So we will be bringing back the construction aspect of this at a future meeting.
Any questions, board members? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Moving on to item C, approve the FY24 classroom site fund plan. Can I get a motion, Mr. Carver?
I move that the governing board approves the fiscal year 2024 classroom site fund plan.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Miglerino, do you have a presentation on this?
I think I have a lot to say tonight, I guess. President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch. This is the plan for the classroom site fund for next year, so for the 23-24 school year. What you're really determining this evening with this plan is the distribution of the performance pay and base pay amount. So that has historically been a 60-40 split, 60% of it going to the base pay of teachers and other professional staff, and 40% going to performance pay. We are recommending that remain at those percentages, but at the increased dollar per weighted student count. So the Joint Legislative Budget Committee released the estimate for next year. It's going up from the current $708 per weighted student count to $758 for next year. And in conversations with the DVEA, one of the things that we're a little concerned about is the revenue for that is generating the increased amount to the $758 number. Includes sales tax revenue. And so there is a chance that this amount could go down in future years. And so we want to make sure that we have options available to us to to ensure that our teachers don't have to endure something that would be difficult, especially if you start talking about their base pay. So one of the options that would be available to us in the future, and one of the reasons for leaving the percentages as we are recommending them this evening at 60/40, is we could change those percentages in the future to retain the base salary of our teachers and adjust the performance pay amount in future years if that were to become necessary. So we will bring the actual performance pay amount to the board at a later date, but this is really to establish the increased amount at $758 amount that the JLBC created, but more importantly, to establish the 60 percentage split. And this will be actually repeated as we preview this in the salary recommendation. You'll see the actual numbers. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
So I have a question. So you're saying that the $758 is state tax. So how much would that be then?
President Paper, how much would that be per teacher?
Yeah, since it's going to be state tax. And then once it's state tax, and then that's when it becomes 60 and 40, right?
It's not, the state tax is 0.6%
Okay.
on the state sales tax. And so that's paid for every purchase that is made. There's also a component of that generated in that $758 that comes from the earnings of the state land trust. So it's not all sales tax generated, but the state land trust proceeds also contribute to the $758 amount. But for our teachers, that $758 amount generates $6,610 in their base pay at 60%.
Okay, and so the 60%, we can bring it up, right? From, we have the 40 and the 60, so instead of saying 60%, we can say 80% and then have like a lower number, right, from the 40. So they will have more on the base pay, basically.
President Paperman, yes, that is a possibility. In fact, some districts have even gone greater than 80%. What's at risk by doing that for next year is if the $758 is not realized in future years, you'll marginalize how much room you have to be able to make any adjustments if the $758 were to significantly decrease. It wasn't that long ago the Classroom Site Fund was right around $400 per weighted student count.
Okay, any questions, Governing Board? Okay, so, yeah, so I call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those that oppose say nay. Next item is number 9, preview item. A, preview for FY24 negotiation solution team salary recommendation. Mr. Miglerino. Yeah.
I think it feels like a one-man band today. President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, this evening we have the preview of the salary recommendation for next year for our staff. This is intended to be able to provide this information so that we can make sure that the recommendation is something that the board can support. Our hope is to bring this back to you for formal consideration at the May 9th board meeting. So no decision to be made this evening, but certainly would welcome any input the board would have based on the direction that we are been working on. I wanted to recognize the negotiation solution team, some of which are in the audience this evening. Some of these are familiar names to the board because these people have been on the committee for some time. That has served us well because there's quite a bit of information, institutional knowledge, I like to refer to it as. But in addition to those people that have that institutional knowledge, we expanded the NST, and so there are 4 members from each group, one of which is a non-association member. And as you might or may not recall, one of the members also has to have, and I think it's less than 3 years of experience or 5 years of experience. There's a limit as to their years of experience. So some of these people may have to be cycled through just because eventually we hope they stay with us long enough to get those years of experience that would disqualify them from this. But we do have several new members. It has been interesting to see the dynamic between those that have been through the process multiple times and some of the new members that have joined us this year. And unfortunately, as you're well aware, we did have a change. So Ms. Mock was actively involved with the NST prior to her leaving her employment here. So we've had we've had to rely on additional information coming from multiple sources throughout this process as well, which has made it just a little bit more challenging this year. Here are the list of meetings that we've met. This is not something that was put together in just the last, several weeks. We started at the beginning of the year to look at a great deal of information regarding the financial well-being of the district, to also look at needs that the district has. The NST members and the employee groups do their own surveys, and those surveys go out not just to the membership of their group, but they are distributed to all of the employees within their classification, with very, I would say, surprising return rates from each of the employee groups. And from that information, we've been able to develop things like the benefit recommendation that has been approved and even revised by the board. We are in the middle of employee benefit open enrollment with our staff currently based on what the board has approved. And we have been able to develop the salary recommendation with the input, not only from the benefit or insurance committee, the survey results from the employee groups, as well as the NST input from the negotiation solutions team themselves. It's all predicated based on what our projection is for next year in budget. And so we are using the current 100th day ADM as the projection for the basis of the funding formula for the state. Our teacher experience index has gone down. These are all just components of the budget to get to kind of a bottom line. We have $6.1 million in additional assistance is added to the general budget limit. This is the final year that we are planning on using ESSER funding for the fiscal year 24, which does include the summer programs for the summer of 2024. We do have over $16 million in budget carry forward that we're projecting. That's in the M&O report, the last report that we shared with the board. That number is significantly more than we have had in the past. So I'm going to talk about that as we get into more details of the recommendation itself. We're not really, again, no student growth is being added, so we're assuming that we'll be relatively flat. That's mostly due to the size of kindergarten today and the senior class that we will be promoting at, in 20 days, I think. But we still think that there is room for growth in the district. So if we do grow, because we will be funded on current year funding, we will certainly revise our budget accordingly if that growth does happen. So what we're doing is taking a conservative approach to the projection for the budget next year. We do have the medical insurance premium that was part of the benefit recommendation is added into this. We have some state retirement changes, some minor increases. That is a shared expense, so the employees match that, so there would be a reduction from their take-home pay, but there's also the match from the employer that will be an increased cost. We have, what we'll share with you is just under $5 million in total compensation increases, plus an additional $500,000 in classroom site fund increases, plus the professional growth amounts, which have been much muted of late. We don't see as much professional growth as we've had, I'll say, more than 5 years ago. Many of these things remain the same with the exception of the utilities budget. Unfortunately, APS, Arizona Public Service, which is our electricity provider, is in the middle of another rate case in which they want to increase the rates. We are already projecting an increase for next year from a previous rate case, so we have a fairly significant increase in our utility budget line, not because we don't continue our utility management program, but trying to offset the increased costs, increased rates from APS. And again, like I said, much of the other things we are holding the line on in terms of our insurance, our property liability insurance costs. That probably will not be able to be true forever. We haven't made significant changes to our property liability insurance coverages. So in future years, that is something that we'll probably bring back for the board, that we will need to, future budgets, not, beyond fiscal year 24 that we're talking about this evening. Going back to the proposed carry forward and the fact that this is the last year for ESSER funds, we are, again, I would say because we want to make sure that we're using a conservative estimate, we are showing a budget balance remaining for next year with all of these things baked in of just over $2.7 million of uncommitted budget in order to help offset what could be a revenue shortfall if we don't have at least $16 million of unspent money at the end of next year. Because we're including the full amount of the carry forward from this year into next year, we would have to have that much savings next year, at least $16 million worth of savings for it to be neutral. This will give us $2.7 million, kind of a running start at that $16 million number for FY25. So again, just trying to be conservative, knowing that we have an unusually high amount of carry forward baked into the FY24 budget projection. So taking all that into consideration, this is what we call the M&O salary grid. It does have some gym font, so it does satisfy all of those requirements for any presentation. Yeah, so it's I can't read that, so I'm going to have to scroll to it quickly. It basically is what ends up being a 2% on average increase for our administrative and exempt group. But that is split a 60% flat increase, which is $1,082, and a 40% percentage increase, which is an eighth tenth of a percent. And you can see what that does for the averages there. So for that group. On the certified side, it is just the reverse. It's a 40% flat increase and a 60% percentage increase. That flat increase of $448, the percentage increase 1.2%. When you add in the additional $210 from the classroom site fund, that ends up being a 2.4% increase on average for our certified staff. And then the classified staff is quite a bit different. Through a lot of discussions with a lot of different individuals, we ended up with a 75-cent per hour flat increase for our classified. As a reminder, we did a $1.40 flat increase as part of the aggregate expenditure limit. This 75-cent per hour would take our lowest hourly salaried employee to $16 per hour. But that flat increase would generate just under a 4% increase for our classified staff. It would be, again, that is on average. So it would be higher for our lowest paid employees and certainly lower for our highest paid classified employees. This recommendation was supported because we feel that would help us fill the vacancies that we have throughout the district, but mainly in the lowest paid classified positions that we seem to struggle with. So this is kind of the gory details, if you will. If you wanted to see that in narrative form, these are the following slides. You can see here the professional growth. Again, I mentioned it was muted at just over $40,000. And again, this is based on what employees earn and turn in for credit per the language that's in our manuals. This is that certified increase. It includes the 2% and the breakdown. I'm sorry, certified and other professional staff. We were able to combine those into one. And this does include that an additional retention payment, retention stipend, that would be in addition to the 2% numbers that we shared before. So for any employee that is here as of May 1st of this year in 2023 and is still an active employee in August, would receive $1,250 per FTE, and that payment would be made at the end of August. If they're still here in April, then we would pay them an additional $1,250 per FTE, and that payment would be made at the beginning of May. Those retention payments, you're going to see that language repeated in all three groups. Those retention payments would be funded from the balance of our ESSER dollars that we have. So that is not coming out of the M&O expenses for fiscal year 24, for next fiscal year, I should say. Classified, I mentioned already, is at 75 cents per hour, flat. Oh, I failed to mention, if I go back, the beginning salary would increase by the flat amount, or $450. We rounded it up to the $450. So the beginning salary amounts would increase by an additional $450, bringing our starting teacher pay to $50,450 for next year. Classified has the 75 cents I mentioned here, and they did want to make sure that the starting salary, the lowest paid hourly employee would make $16 an hour. They wanted all 75 cents to be added to the hiring schedule. And we did caution them that a second-year returning employee in a similar position would be making the same dollar amount as a first-year new hire. So we went into that with open eyes as to that, and still part of the recommendation. So I just wanted to make the board aware of that, and we are aware of some of the complications that may cause. But in addition to that, you'll again see the retention payment here, and the NST did determine that they wanted to make sure that $1,250 was consistent with all three groups. So on a percentage basis, this is going to be a much higher dollar amount, but many of our classified employees that aren't, that are at our schools and that aren't in full-time 8-hour positions. So it will be adjusted, but it is $1,250. Again, same criteria, $1,250 per FTE. If they continue to be employed, are employed here in May of this year, continue to be employed in August, so they come back, and then are still an employee in April, we'll pay them the additional $1,250 per FTE for the second payment. And then likewise, the administrative exempt group is 2% on average, again, at 60% of it being flat, 40% being a percentage increase. And because of the flat amount being just over $1,000, we would add $1,000 to the starting salaries for all of those hiring schedules. And then the retention payment, as I've mentioned before, same criteria. There is a note at the bottom that I'm referring to as the trigger language. So based on the actual budget that budget projection that we stamped today with today's date that I referenced earlier, if for some reason, because the legislature has not concluded, if they were to provide some undedicated funding Undedicated meaning there's still some bills around that are still alive that could be specifically targeted where they had to be used in a certain way. House Bill 2800 comes to mind. It's the $10,000 increased teacher salary bill. If there's more than $2 million worth of undedicated funding in what the legislature ultimately approves, this basically calls the NST back into session to redistribute those funds for next year. If this language wasn't in here, I guess we wouldn't be obligated, but we would still receive the money, and we would then probably just add to the carry forward and do it in a future year. But since we're trying to get the salary recommendation completed, this gives us the ability to consider it even though the legislature hasn't finished. And if something was to happen unexpectedly, then we would just call the NST back, and then the board would have a subsequent decision to make about the amendment or additional recommendation that the NST would develop. This is the classroom site fund numbers that I kind of mentioned before. You can see what the amounts are within not only the classroom site fund, but also the instructional improvement fund, which is Fund 20. So the combined amount. So there's the $210 increase from $66.20 prior year to $68.30 for FY24. And then we just have a definition here for active status so that there's a clarification how we'll handle employees on leave. And our attorney helped us compose and author information to hopefully make it clear to our employees. So next steps are bringing this back for the board's consideration. I guess maybe I should have left a step, or I should have put a step at the beginning of this, which is to get input from the board based on what we have created. I will say that just from the conversation from the NST, the goal was to provide a reward for our employees that continue to do the work, and in many cases with limited number of people filling positions, to reward those people that continue to be doing the work throughout the district, but also to create a plan that would help fill some of those vacancies by increasing some of the hiring schedules so that we can attract more people to the district. That's the intent of the recommendation. Would love to get the input from the board tonight, which would have been the step that I didn't show here. After that, we would bring the salary recommendation for formal consideration on the 9th. We'll also have the budget revision for this year on the meeting of the 9th. We also would like to bring the salary schedules on that meeting so that we can get those published with these new amounts. So again, any input that you have regarding how we're treating the salary schedules or the hiring schedules would be helpful. But then for the rest of the budget, we have to propose the budget by in June because the statute requires us to have the adopted budget done by July 15th. We hope to have all that in light of the legislature concluding before, in enough time for us to know what to include. There have been years where we've had to propose and adopt the budget and immediately revise it because the legislature did not finish in enough time for the Auditor General to complete the forms and do all the work that they need to do depending on what the legislature does approve. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and just wanted to say one last comment that and thanks to the NST folks that helped create this over the course of the last year.
Thank you, Mr. Miglorino. I do have a question. So your administrator exam group, are you talking about principals and directors that are going to be getting $1,000 on their base salary?
President Paperman, yes, the principals, assistant principal, even some of our exempt employees, which includes supervisors, managers, and directors, all fall within that category of exempt, administrative or exempt.
And we're giving 75 cents to classify on their base salary.
That is correct.
So this is one of the concerns that I have. I've been talking to many classifieds. They can not afford on the salary that they have right now, 75 cents for a bus driver, for a cleaner, especially the way our market is with gas, with food, with rent. So in previous board meeting, I did state, why are we giving principals and director salary increase when we have a need to retain our classified? So this is something that I think that the board needs to take into consideration. I have talked to administrators and they're facing challenges. If they don't have anyone to clean their school, they have to do it themselves or clean the bathroom because it needs to be done. So we need to think out of the box, go back into negotiation and see the needs that the district needs right now. We need to retain our classified, give them better pay. So from my point of view, I don't think we should be giving administrator at this point or at this year a salary increase when we need to give more to our bus drivers, to our cleaners, to our classified secretaries. And also I'm seeing an 8.03% increase in medical premium cost. So would that be like a decrease in salary if the premiums are going up?
President Paperman, these are all things that were discussed with the, amongst the NST. The medical premium was offset by reserves that we have. So there are, because the benefit recommendation has already been approved by the board, some employees are actually seeing a reduction in their medical election, what they've elected for, which depends on the plan and when they were hired. But over the past 6 years, the classified employee salary increases are just under 40%. The administrative increases just over 31%. So there has been a differential, and this proposal does create almost double the increase on a percentage basis. So 3.9% for the classified at 75 cents per hour versus 2% for our administrative staff. One of the things, the administrative staff is supportive of that because of the same things that you've mentioned, because many of them are unfortunately having to cover for the vacancies that aren't filled. And so it's not that those things that you mentioned weren't included in the development of this recommendation. But for the most part, there are some things that would be an increased cost for employees. Like I mentioned earlier, the Arizona State Retirement System, there's a small percentage increase in the contribution, but that is a benefit to our employees. I refer to it as a forced savings account. So employees have to contribute to it if they work more than 20 hours a week for more than 20 consecutive weeks. And when they contribute to it, there's a benefit at the end. They just don't see it. It doesn't help with their take-home pay at the moment, but some of those increased costs are being offset by the increases that we're proposing in this recommendation. That is an accurate statement.
One recommendation, as has negotiation looked, provide to the board the salaries, because I know one of the things that even Dr. Finch has mentioned, oh, well, teachers are making as much as administrators. So maybe look the higher salary and put a cap, well, we're not going to give them and give more to those so we can have retention, especially with the classified and this is not only our district that's facing these challenges, this is other districts. So maybe, think out of the box, to retain our classified. Any questions, governing board?
They are getting the 140, right? And then on top of that, the 75. So we're actually looking at $2.15 raise.
President Paperman,
That
yes, that is correct. So the aggregate expenditure limit increases were added to their salary. They were paid to them in one-time payment in FY23, and they were added to their base salary for next year.
Any other, Ms. Orway?
Mr. Miglerino and crew, members of the esteemed committee. I'm just wondering, at some point, not tonight, but for those that are not familiar with what you guys do inside of your negotiations, that you could maybe give an overview at some point in time, because I know that you guys think out of the box. Know that you have members and you give and take and you figure things out. By the time it comes to us, it's not like you haven't spent 100 hours trying to get to a good place. So I don't know how you could accomplish that, but I think maybe the process, I don't know, videotape yourselves or something, but just something so when we get to this, we know that you guys have pretty much thought of whatever it is you can think of to do. And Jim, you talked about trigger language in case the legislative body wanted to give us more money. That would still, the trigger language would be there if they decided something weird happened and there was something lesser. Not that they could do that. Oh, I mean, not that they should do that or would happen, but just so we know it goes both ways. And thank you again for all the hours, excuse me, and for the new members who had to learn a lot. The negotiation for the salaries has been something that I think people think it tears people apart, but it kind of brings you together. And one more thing, Mr. Miglerino, could you please talk about the different employees that would be part of that administrative group? So we're not thinking that they're all principals. Could you go over a couple of the description of that group?
Sure. President Paperman, the administrative exempt group, again, it includes our principals, assistant principals, our deans, coordinators, supervisors, our managers, our directors, and even our deputy superintendents fall within the administrative exempt group. And the one slide, I mean, the eye test slide, this one here, which I'll have to find on my page too, gives you what the total cost is, right? So for the almost 150 individuals, 148.3 FTE, that total cost for that 2% raise is $267,492. The 75 cent per hour for the 1,300 employees that are in the classified group, that cost is just over $1.6 million. Both those numbers are do not include the benefit cost. That would be in addition to that, about 20.3% additional increase.
Thank you.
Mr. Carver?
Mr. Miglerino, I appreciate all the numbers that you guys crunched because it's that was like drinking from a fire hose. I appreciate that. Couple of things in case I missed it. So last year, because of the AEL, as Ms. Ordway referred to, trigger language, will some of these raises, was that the slide that showed the one-time payment? Is that the trigger language for the AEL next year? Or are all of these increases regardless of the AEL?
President Paperman, those, all of these are assuming the AEL gets resolved for next year. So these are not specific to the AEL like we had in the trigger language in the FY23 salary recommendation. But it is worth noting that the expenditure limit has not been resolved for fiscal year 24. We do believe that it will get resolved. We're not sure what the consequences are going to be to get it that resolved. I think there are political ramifications with the aggregate expenditure limit, but there is potentially the chance that the aggregate expenditure limit does not get resolved for FY24. We have language in our employment agreements that give us the ability to make adjustments to salaries. It's not something that we hope to ever have to impose, but the language, it is limited, by the way, too, but the language it is included in the employment agreements that our attorneys have helped craft.
So this proposal this year is indifferent to the AEL. This is best case scenario. Everybody does their job at the legislature moving forward, and we go forward with no interruptions.
That is what is assumed in these numbers, correct?
One other question or thought, really, since you were soliciting. Over the last few years, there's been substantial percentage increases because of the things that the legislature has done with affording money to the schools. And I noticed last year when I was sitting in the gallery during the budget talks that the percentages of increases to pay for our certified staff are across the board, which is commendable. But I wonder, just kind of in my own head, if it shouldn't be almost stair-stepped to taper down to a smaller percentage towards the high end so that we could afford to pay entry level. And granted, I know we pay a premium. We're doing well with 50,000 plus. I think that you and your team have done an amazing job to make sure that we can afford to pay that, because that makes us one of the best paying districts. But I just wonder, as years have gone by over the last 3 years with these big increases the legislature has afforded us, the pay gap between entry level and top end has increased through the blanket application of standard percentages across all pay ranges. So whereas we used to only have, just say, a $30,000 difference between entry level and high end, by giving everybody the same percentage increase over the last 3, now 4 years, that difference has grown. And I just wonder if we could afford to redirect a little bit of that so that we could again give a little bit of a higher percentage to entry level. So just something to think about. I just had wondered that last year, and I just wonder if that's something that's feasible with the team, if they think that would net us more teachers and possibly a higher quality of teacher moving forward.
Yeah, President Pepperman, Mr. Carver, the last year that was a lengthy discussion and ended up becoming part of the language that's in the manual that restricts the percentage to be no greater than 70% for the percentage increase without a unanimous vote of the entire NST group. And so what we do is we split the increase up over a percentage increase and a flat dollar increase to be able to help make sure that the bottom end receives more or a higher percentage than they would if it was just a direct percentage. So in all cases, the folks in the lowest paying positions within each group are going to get a higher percentage. Even more so with the admin exempt group and the classified group, because the classified group is a complete flat increase at 75 cents. There are other factors at play in the classified group because not all of those positions are 12-month positions. Not all of them are a full-time 8-hour position. So there are other mitigating factors with that. But it's also the reason why the admin group, and this was a recommendation from the, I need to give credit where credit is due, from the building leadership team. They wanted to make sure that the flat increase was 60% of that raise. So the lowest paid admin exempt groups, our assistant principals, our coordinators, some of the lowest paid exempt positions are going to get a much higher percentage raise than the 2% because the flat increases, it's so heavily weighted to the flat. So that's the way we try and mitigate that, because Ms. Paperman was correct in that we don't have a cap on our salaries. The reason for that is because we do distribute the salary increases in this manner, but you're also accurate to say that for the, I think it was more than 5 years or something close to that. When the 20 by 2020 initiative was proposed by Governor Ducey, there was some thought or belief that meant a 20% increase is what the teachers should expect, teacher and other professional staff should expect. So for about 5 years, the percentage increases were 100% percentage increase for the certified and other professional staff. That was changed last year in the manual and now can be no greater than that 70% I mentioned earlier without a unanimous approval of the entire NST. And even knowing that that there was a capability of going to a 70-30, the DVEA and the entire and the entire NST supported them being at a 60-40 split, again, to help the bottom end of the schedule. So our second-year teachers will get a higher percentage increase than the 2.9, whatever it's showing there, 2.4% that's showing. But our most highly compensated teachers or other professional staff will get less than 2.4%.
Thank you for that definition. Appreciate you.
Mrs. Fisher?
Mr. Magarino, has there ever been a cap on any salaries at Deer Valley?
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, yes, there. Prior to 2005, there was a step and rogue salary schedule for, I believe, all the employee groups.
Okay. I think we have to be careful. You can't just exclude an entire group. We talk about them in blankets. We talk about the blanket admin, and that includes, secretaries in some cases. We blanketly talk about all certified, which isn't just teachers, it's a lot of other certified. We blanketly talk about our classified, which there are some classified who, quite frankly, would make more money at McDonald's for a lot less work. But then there's others who are fairly well compensated, depending on their department and their position. My concern is that was any job study done on any of our classified staff? Because we have looked year after year, and every year they get a token of, when you look at comparative, and I know it's difficult when you're at the top paying position. It's like, well, wait a minute, I work hard, and I get that's difficult. Last year when I gave staff a raise, there was a big chunk that didn't get one because they were already much higher compensated. This year, myself and the other leadership did not receive an increase so that our staff could receive a more significant or reasonable increase. I'm a little concerned that we have some higher level individuals that make more than the governor, and we have entry level people who make less than McDonald's. I would really like to see some evening out and whether that means that we put a cap, but I don't want that discussion to become a pick on one group or another group, because it's just, you can't blanketly do that. It's not fair to just say this group should all give up an increase. I guess I would be interested in being provided some of the job studies that have been done, and if there's been any comparative analysis, not necessarily just to districts, but to overall market. Because the truth is, if they can leave the school district and go to a county or a law office or someplace else, we kind of need to have an idea so that we're not losing quality. We have, for the last 2 years, bumped up against no custodians, bumped up against even some secretaries saying, you know what, it's not worth it anymore. I'm just not making enough. I can go, I know what I do. I'm not really just a secretary. I'm an office manager, a high level, almost administrator, and I'm not making enough. So I think I would like to see that. I would like to see a better picture of what our salaries are. I used to get, all salaries and then just evaluate them based on position, not knowing whose they were, but just looking at that. It doesn't seem that we ever look at anything like that anymore. And so we really don't know, other than just blanket approvals and percentages that, hit a group. And in that group, you could have somebody who's already in a six-figure position, and you could have another person who does equal or a level of work or more, who's not even hit 50K. So there's a little bit of concern. I would like to see a little bit more information, maybe not to the extent of the scatter plot again, but at least some level of additional information. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perhaps, Jim, you could talk a little bit about, to Ms. Paperman's point and Ms. Fisher's point, about the benefits. Obviously, McDonald's has a different approach than we do, vacations, benefits, healthcare, et cetera. To talk a little bit about that as well, because that's a piece of our puzzle as well. Now that we've been increasing our rates throughout the system, we continue to get employees from other districts, including bus drivers, secretaries, everyone, custodians. So we maybe talk a little bit about the marketplace in relationship to our peers. I'm sure you talk about that in your NST.
Certainly. So a couple points. I'm just taking some notes to, so the benefit package that we offer, even when we compare it to other districts, is more rich. The benefit offering is more rich than other district offerings, and we have things like paid days that are built into the contract for our employees. So it's just even the hourly rate of pay isn't fair. If you were to take just the non-work days that are in a classified employee's contract, you would add 11% to the hourly rate of pay, compared to other options where they may or may not be paid. So there are some benefits like that, like dental coverage, like short-term disability plans, that aren't necessarily guaranteed in other positions when you're making those comparisons. But the job study is something that we are currently working on. We've shared with the board that JB Rewards is in the process of looking at our exempt group, as well as classified employees that can be relatable positions outside of a school district. So custodians, secretarial positions, food service workers, our technology folks. And Ms. Moffett is helping me because she's more the expert on this, so I should probably just turn the mic over to her. That report will not likely be ready in time for us to be able to use that data for this particular cycle, if you will. But we did have the benefit of having the folks from JB Rewards here while we were compiling the salary recommendation. And I happened to mention to them what was being proposed on the classified salary schedule. And they said that was universally what they saw, is that there needed to be a increase to all of the positions in general, and then there needs to be additional modifications for select positions. So this is what I would consider to be the first step in the process, is to get within the market range for all the positions. And then there are going to need to be additional adjustments in future years to be able to make sure that there's some differentiation. Just as an example, we have one level of trades within our facilities department, but we learned that there is a differentiation in the marketplace for different trades. A carpenter has a different earning potential than an HVAC technician in our climate. And yet we pay a carpenter the same amount of money as we do an HVAC technician. So I think one of the recommendations is going to be to differentiate some of those tradespeople. And that's just one example of many. Universally, all the trade positions are low. This will help increase because all 75 cents is being added to the hiring schedule. But there are going to need to be some additional adjustments to make sure that we're within the market. And just as a reminder, JB Rewards has done this for many of the districts in the Valley. They are not based out of Phoenix. They're actually based out of the state of Washington. But they have a lot of data from all of the school districts that they previously worked with, most of which are districts that we would be either close to in proximity or would consider a comparable district in terms of our, configuration and makeup, large K-12 districts in the valley here. As well as the corporations, because we are looking at comparing it to the marketplace.
Mrs. Fisher?
I appreciate the review of benefits. I think at this point, almost anyone who's been around school districts is aware that the benefits are extremely rich. And that is across all, the whole industry is very rich when it comes to benefits. But I just would caution all of us to consider that out of every 10,000 people, 151 are going homeless. And that includes people who work for school districts. Benefits are great, but if you can't keep a roof over your head, 12% going to ASRS or dental or vision or anything else has no value. And some of our lowest end positions even if you're paying them $16 an hour, if you're working them 9 months a year, or you're working them, because we understand also where those positions aren't full-time, permanent for the whole year. Do you see what I'm saying? And so there is a concern with, the care for our people when we have some at the top end and some that are so far into the bottom end. So I would still caution that we need to take a look at the overall and perhaps put a cap. And I would hope that other governing boards are considering the same because the district cannot run without our working class. They just can't. We could survive at least a little while with some individuals that are transitioning or what have you. But I tell you what, our working staff decide not to come tomorrow, we will have to close the schools. We could not work without them. And that same with our teachers. I mean, so I don't want to exclude anybody, but I just think we need to have a little bit more balance in what we're doing.
Does DVA have anything to say since this is going to be voted in future meeting? Okay, thank you. Oh, classify. Okay, do you have anything to say? Classify. Thank you. I still would like to say that ask the board to take into consideration that we do need to look at the caps. I've gone to different schools and community members that are saying that we don't have enough cleaners, we're having issues with bus driver, we cannot get people to be hired. So this is something that we need to look at, the cap. If you're making over $100,000, why are you getting $1,000 on your base rates when classifieds are only getting 75%? And I agree with Mrs. Fisher, there's challenges with rent, the economy, the food, gases. Personally, I have seen people that working class that cannot afford rent and they're living in their cars. So we need to see where we stand as a society right now and start looking at the salary and do like a job study salary. If we can get the classifies DVA districts, to start making changes because every year is the same thing. Oh, our classifieds are leaving, or teachers are not making enough, or benefits are too high. So we need to start making changes moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino, for your presentation. The next one, we're going to move to item B, preview the tax credits and free authorization for the 2023-2024. Mr. Miglerino, again.
President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, I think I actually already covered this under the wrong item. Maybe this is a good time to disclose that I'm operating on less than 4 hours of sleep, unfortunately. But we are previewing the fee schedule that I covered during the item that was the old business item, so I apologize. But, and I don't want to be redundant, it's the information that's contained here. The statute does require that any fees that are charged be approved by the governing board, and so they are listed here. And just to make sure that we're clear, any fee that the board approves, we do also have a provision that those fees can be adjusted by the building principal in the event that somebody was unable to afford them. So I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Any questions, board member?
I have no questions.
Okay, moving to the next item, reports. Mrs. Orway?
We still have, I think, one high school left for their prom, so Calling All Fairy Godmothers is happy to have given over 100 dresses away and one suit. There is still time for those at Goldwater. Their prom's not till Saturday. 8th grade promotion and dance dresses are available, so send an email. Enjoyed the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade art show. 8+ celebration at Sandra Day O'Connor High School was incredible. I wanted to bring up a little bit about Las Brisas, their Renaissance night. They continue to shine, and I'm saying the word shine because there's stars, and I thought I'd make that little connection because it's late. Maybe you didn't get it. I'm going to be going there, I think it's Thursday, to help interview their 6th graders for Junior Biztown for JA. There's like 1,000 other things I'm not going to go into, but I am going to ask for an executive session prior to the beginning of the school year, and not too long after this one ends, according to the statute that would allow us to discuss our threat vulnerability assessment that we have had done this year. We've got a couple of days left, couple of weeks left, depending who you are. Finish strong, stay in it, and we appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Mrs. Simmons?
Good evening, Deer Valley community. So my board report will be short and sweet. I had the opportunity to spend the last 3 days at the School Safety and Security Summit in Glendale. It was a wonderful opportunity to hear from professionals in their fields as well as school administrators who had some pretty incredible stories to share. I listened to a father tell his story about the day his son was murdered in the Parkland shooting. I heard from a superintendent whose high school in Texas was a target of a mass shooting back in 2018. So they were very moving, and there was many more. And I also had the opportunity to attend some breakout sessions, which included topics about how to address our social and emotional difficulty with our young adults and being a part of their lives, and empowering parents to help be a part of prevention of suicide. In evaluating and updating our own school safety plans and emergency plans. And then what I really appreciated about this experience was the content that was provided, because it wasn't just about one school safety issue. I think sometimes we automatically go towards school shootings, but also to discuss other school safety issues such as suicide and some of the situations that our students encounter that we don't necessarily take into account their background and what they're going through and why they might be acting a certain way because of that. So mental health, like going back to that, the importance of different backgrounds of our students and how their experiences shape their decisions, and therefore those decisions shape the lives of our students and our teachers as well. So as a board member and a parent, I feel there are many takeaways that I can apply to our district. So I do look forward to seeing how we can work together to apply them and further educate our community so we can continue to grow in a positive and safe direction. Tomorrow is our last, that's all I'll say about the summit, but a lot to share there. So I have some thoughts that I'll probably be bringing forward in the next couple of meetings. Tomorrow's our last pop lunch for our PTO presidents here at district office. And we still have got lots of spring end of year events going on, such as the band concerts. There's a dance show at Goldwater tomorrow, lots of award ceremonies. So graduation's just around the corner. So keep up the hard work to all of our wonderful teachers out there and staff. Thank you.
Mr. Carver?
Thank you. A couple of follow-up points. Ms. Moffett, I want to thank you for the correspondence that helped clarify the issue that was brought up at the last meeting regarding resignations versus terminations. I would ask that, could we get the same sort of report, though, on what it looks like for classified? In the particular instance we were talking about, it concerned classified, and I'd just like to be able to understand what that looks like. Thank you, I appreciate that. And Dr. Z, I know that we've mentioned a couple of times what a document would look like, outline what the public can expect when we have lockdowns. So we've discussed it, what a lockdown is, what it looks like, what we deal with, and the challenges that we deal with when it comes to modern technology. After the Boulder Creek incident a few weeks ago, there was a lot of concern from the community that they just don't know what to expect. Of course, they can expect their child to text them, and that doesn't really help the situation. But on a 40,000-foot view, what would it look like? Can we put something together that we put out there so that the community knows that we hear them and that they want to understand better what it is that we do and in what order it might be done, whether that's a text message, lockdown at school X, please don't come to the school, and then after that you could potentially find information on the website, just bullet point by bullet point what our process looks like, what we're doing so that we can give that response to the community. I would hate to try to put that document together myself based on the information that's been given to us. I don't think that I would do the district justice. So if you don't mind, I would appreciate that. On the 19th, I had a meeting with the DVEF, Miss Marie, and Stephanie, and a member of leadership from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to figure out how they, being the Church of Jesus Christ, could best help the district when it came to our partnership with GC, the City Serve closets, and what that looks like. And I believe that we had a good roundtable discussion, and there's a lot of hope on the horizon to be able to help the community in places where they need it. And we're trying to find the right tool for the job in the different environments. That it was a great meeting, but by all accounts, and I'm glad to be a part of that. On the 21st, I was able to attend the Sandra Day O'Connor A+ Excellence Award in Spring Assembly. Boy, they don't make assemblies like that when I was growing up. Disco lights and sounds. We've got some amazing children in our district. Their ability to lead and take charge and organize those kind of events, it was really impressive. We've got a lot of talent out there, and I was blessed to be able to attend that. On 4/22, so everybody received the report that Mrs. Simichek and I gave about the school, about the shoe drive, and how we've got 250 pairs of shoes and delivered 25 pairs to each of the 10 Title I K through 6 schools. there's a second wave to that, and I'm not sure if I've communicated that to the group, but the Arizona Rattlers, our indoor arena football league, has taken on a shoe drive for the Deer Valley School District, and they are collecting shoes at every away game watch party at different restaurants around the valley that people can bring shoes to. And when they have the home games, they have a drop off booster club tent. And they reach out to me every time they fill a box. And so, so far, what I know of is that we have 2 full boxes sitting in my garage of shoes that we'll be able to hand out at the beginning of the school year. They're going to do that throughout the entire arena football season, and it'll culminate in the August 8th home game with the season-ending game, and they're trying to plan some pretty big things for that. So that is about it. I appreciate everything that the administration does. You guys are amazing. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher?
Just a few things. I just wanted to make a note of the 30th annual, the anniversary of the preschool event. It was really wonderful, and it was just nice to see how the community was brought together for that event. So I really appreciate all the efforts that went into it. I did also attend the Safety Summit, and there was a lot of good information, which I hope we can discuss specifically during the executive session that Ms. Orley has requested. It's great to get a report, but maybe we have it be a little bit longer and discuss some of what was in that Safety Summit. As I shared with Dr. Z at the summit, one of the things that I was a little concerned with is that there's a lot of effort being done, a lot of work being done, but there's not a lot of statistical data actually being looked at and thinking about kind of outside the box. When you look at 1970 compared to, 2020 or 21 or 22, it can jump a lot from year after year. So 2021, it was a 1,155% increase in school shootings from 1970. If you go to this last year, 22, it was 675% increase from 1970. So you can look over those years, and it's very different year to year. But the one thing that I thought was very, very interesting is when you start throwing those statistics together and start looking at other factors, they're not as random. So you have significant swings year over year in the changes, but the one number that is consistent is that there is a targeted victim. Now, there's other classes of random shootings or null or neither or other things, but it was significant that year over year, the more I went through all the years, targeted victim remained right around 42%. So that at least tells me that we need to have a discussion about identifying or better identifying where there is a potential for a targeted victim. I don't have the answer. I don't know what that looks like, but to me, that's a significant statistical number. And so I would like to add some conversation in around there. The other thing I would like to request, and I don't care whether we add it to a study session already planned or another study session, but I would like for us to review as a board the employee survey that we received. I looked at looking through all the written responses, and you have the few that are targeting someone or something and whatnot, and that just happens. You can either absorb them or you can be upset by them. But this is, I think, the first time I've ever seen the survey where there was a clear separation between the district office and the campuses, a clear difference between administrations and perhaps our staff, a clear change in tone or belief in division with parents. That was something that was very clear in there, and maybe others won't see it as clear. So, but I think that we as the governing board are responsible for not just one employee, we are responsible for the whole district. And I do believe that even if it means just how can we give support or what can we do, I think that discussion needs to happen. You know, I get it. People see what I put out. They don't see the other side of it, and that's cool. I don't care. But they are very tired of the disconnect between Mr. Finch and myself. And I think, you know, that goes back to the original offer that I made when I was elected to address that. But we can address that. But the rest, it's district, and that needs to be our priority. And I would ask that that be added somewhere that we can actually discuss that. I don't think it falls to an executive session, so perhaps a study session. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Well, I would like to thank all the high school administrators giving me the opportunity to talk to them, how they are doing, how can the board provide support. One of the things I was looking for since I've been dealing with students in high school or that they graduate with the homeless populations, and we do have homeless students within our high school. I was very happy actually to see the Friday update where Dr. Finch stated that hiring social workers, right? That we need social workers. This will help the high schools for students to, you know, to have somewhere to go or direction to get support. So I was very happy to see that in the Friday update and also having counseling. The grading system, I also was very glad to see in the Friday update that we all want in the same understanding with parents. So I would like to thank the committee that's working on the grading system and looking forward to move in a positive direction where students and parents will understand what the percentage are and how they can support and help their children. I would like to thank the committee. And thank you for the negotiation team for taking your time, trying to come up with solutions to give raises. And I still say that we need to focus very much on with our classified because it's true. I agree with Mrs. Fisher. The homeless population have risen very high the way our economy is, and this is our district, this is our community, and we need to support each other the best we can, even though if we need to give up something. Thank you. Superintendent report.
Thank you, Ms. Paperman. Deer Valley High School also had its A+ celebration, as well as O'Connor and Sierra Verde's next week. As you remember, we had 4 of those this year. And many rated A celebrations as well. So it's exciting this time of year. That's when all that stuff comes in. We had fine arts. Ms. Ordway mentioned that for the elementary folks. That was a success next door. Obviously, spring athletics is full steam ahead, and I believe O'Connor Girls Beach plays tomorrow for the state title against Queen Creek at Castile High School, which is at the end of the earth. Make sure you fill up your tank. And I think it's at 6 o'clock versus Queen Creek. That's a long ways down there. And so if you want to get there early, it will be a great celebration, hopefully. They are number 1 in the state. And I think they avenged their only loss. Maybe they're undefeated. They might be undefeated. They've had another great year. Remember, they were the state champs last year. The health fair, the DVUSD health fair, reminding the staff to stop by Friday here in the district office in the PM. I think it's 2:30, 3 o'clock for a couple hours to pick up your, even if you want to enter and pick up a T-shirt, and for a fun walk run on Saturday at O'Connor. I believe it starts at 8 a.m. So it'll be And I think there's an O'Connor softball game right after it, so you can two birds, one stone. Walk 3 kilometers and then watch girls softball. Um, Teacher Appreciation Week is coming up, so make sure you say hi and thank your local teacher in our system. Obviously, we have great staff, and that's what makes us great, and we want to make sure to honor those folks. Last but not least, GCU, I meet twice a year, sometimes 3 times, with GCU's president, President Mueller, and he selects about a dozen superintendents throughout the state to solve more global, statewide, and local problems together. And it's been a very fruitful group, and Deer Valley's been in the middle of that discussion. City of Serve being one example. And so how we can better serve, how we can better connect with our universities on gaining staff for our system, but also have an impact on their university as well through our mentoring programs, our opportunities here to work in Deer Valley. Last but not least, I guess later this week, I'm going to be on a talk show with CJ Stevenson. He's an O'Connor student. Miss Sheila got me into this, so it'll be interesting to see if it turns out to be fun. So I think they're selling tickets. No, I know it's going to be fun. But it'll be an opportunity to talk to the O'Connor students about what we do and why we do it. And so CJ is involved in my Superintendent Advisory Council. If you haven't met him before, great student. He did an internship with us as well here at the district office. And I just got a text too that the district office that was referred to, our scores were exactly the same as last year. So it might be interesting to see what other board members think once they read the comments and scores. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Future meetings are posted. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved to close at, 8:45.
All those in favor, say aye.